Preponderance of evidence is a concept that's borrowed from the legal profession, and it doesn't mean absolute, complete, compelling evidence. That's a higher standard. It doesn't mean that 11 good men and women have to agree. It means preponderance, most of the evidence. So when I look at across those descriptors, I'm going to find a couple that appear to be in the accomplished. One's in emerging, one's in proficient. So overall, where's the preponderance of evidence? When I put it all together, where does the evidence best fit in describing you on that 5-point scale? And that's where you receive the rating. Okay. Are you getting that concept? So that means some judgment has to be entered into here, but we want to be consistent as we can, in making that judgment. We will have to play with and work with this idea of preponderance of evidence multiple times. Okay. Questions? Are we having fun yet? Okay. Rubrics are going to be vitally important for us. You're going to get to know these as evaluators exceptionally well. This will help determine the diagnostic profile. One final word, just sort of summary to try to make some sense of it. Real world thinking. Our older daughter, Beth, is, interestingly, Jenny's daughter and my daughter are at the same university. Jenny's daughter is in a residency in surgery, and my daughter is a faculty member, brand new job for her, assistant professor, in internal medicine. They both know lots of sophisticated, complex, interesting, fascinating procedures. That's pretty high, pretty complex work. But I want to remind you that what we're talking about in big picture is that when we make these judgments, we're looking at pretty sophisticated, complex work. It is rocket science to be a good teacher. And when you take it all apart and package it the way that we're doing it, this is challenging work. We probably should never show these rubrics to any prospective teachers. They would run away. I don't think they'd want to do this work. I don't really mean that, but it's not for the faint at heart. When you're judging these rubrics, it's pretty high standard. It's about rigor. And we must use the rubrics to know if we have good people. Would you want to have an ineffective MD working on you? Do you want to have a dentist with her hands in your mouth if that person wasn't really proficient at what he or she was doing? Not me. We need the same thing for our kids. That's what this is all about, using the rubrics to ensure quality. How well am I doing is the question that the rubrics will answer for us. How well am I doing? Okay, final call. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Strong, in your example of a few seconds ago, where there were 2 exemplary descriptors, 1 proficient, 1 emerging, where would you say that teacher would be rated?
It would either be high-end proficient, which is simply proficient, or it could be not exemplary. Let me say accomplished instead of exemplary. Let me say accomplished. 2 accomplished, that's easier. 2 accomplished, 1 proficient, and 1 emerging. It's either going to be high-end proficient or low-end emerging. I don't know where I would settle. I'll put all the data on the table, and I'm going to get a sense of sort of the weight of all of it. And that's where my judgment comes to apply. 2 here, 1 here, and 1 here doesn't necessarily mean the average. There has to be some judgment that would apply. With that emerging, I may be pulled down into the proficient level. It would depend on how much evidence I have on that and how low the emerging is compared to how much strength there is up in those 2 accomplished attributes.
You said high-end proficient, low-end emerging. I think you meant low-end.
Yes, high-end proficient, low-end accomplished. I'm sorry. So it's right on the border between proficient and accomplished. That's what was in my head. The wrong words came out. but sort of right in there, and I'd have to make some judgment. There's some ways to help us with inter-rater agreement. One is we keep working, staying with the standard. Always go back to the standard, and it will generally guide you, virtually drive you into making that decision. Another thing we can do in practice is to have a lot of practice. And for you, we're going to do that more and more. And eventually, your evaluators who implement the system will have to have significant training. Training will be the key for making Compass work in Louisiana. And then a third thing that we can do, a really simple tool, is that if we have 2 administrators or 3 administrators in the building, rather than Elaine, you making the one decision on the people that you have been assigned to, and Pam, you making those for whom you've been assigned, and Alan doing the same thing, let's bring all those together, put that evidence on the table, and have the 3 of you review the data, coalesce around your decision. Now we're going to automatically have inter-rater agreement. We will put multiple eyes on it, and I'll have a lot more confidence in that decision. So that's a way to help us determine whether it is proficient or accomplished. Yes?
It's kind of like when we did have LaTap, it was only the 2-1 rating. A lot of the administrators, if there was 5 attributes, they wanted to say, oh, well, if they had 3 2s and 2 1s, that means they automatically get a 2. It didn't work out that way. It was the same kind of thing. You had to keep going back to what the ultimate domain was and see if you could cite enough evidence in
Yes.
there, if it was more powerful to outweigh it. So it does, I mean, I see, but it's very confusing because it's gray. It's not that black and white. That's easy.
We are not creating behavioral objectives. We can't put teachers up on a scale and say, you're an accomplished. We don't have that much precision. There is some gray territory in this. We don't always know exactly. There's error in measurement, and that's built into this because we don't know how to eliminate it. We're not at that point where we can do so. I don't know that we ever will be. So but we can be driven by the evidence, and it is not 2 + 2 + 1 equals a whatever equals the 5 necessarily, and it puts you here. You have to apply your judgment. The last thing I want to do, and I'm over by a few minutes, so I started to apologize, but I did it anyway. I want to take you to the last thing to take a look at. Go to the Louisiana Teacher Competencies Handbook. This is the manual that your evaluators and teachers are actually going to be using. This is the document. Everything else is the training around it and the support we need for it, but this is the living, breathing document they're going to work with. You need to help your evaluators know these 11 standards backwards and forwards. Go to page 21 in the handbook, in the Compass Handbook. It's actually page 22. You were thinking big picture. I sort of broke it apart, teased the standards apart. Let's put it back together as the last step. On page 22, you get standard planning standard 1, which describes what it is, and then it gives us the rubric. And you see this multi-layered, behaviorally anchored rubric that we can take across the various levels. Your principals need to know this more than almost anything in this handbook. There are 11 pages in here, one devoted to each of 11 standards. They have to become intimately familiar with these standards. This is the foundation for the whole evaluation system. Everything else is predicated on these 11 standards. Okay. With that, let me stop, and I'm going to enjoy somebody else. Who's up next? Lori?